Welcome to a financial planning podcast with a down-to-earth vibe. Sasquatch listens while brewing his morning coffee. This is Through the Pines. On this episode, we'll chat financial scams. This is going to be a good episode. Romance scams, my favorite. Lottery scams, inheritance, timeshare, event scams, technology, and what are some of the red flags you should always look for. Joining us this week on Through the Pines, we have our financial advisors, Brandon and Rex, Forbes best in-state wealth management teams for Utah, Baxter, Nelsen and Associates, Advisor Hub, fastest growing advisors to watch, under $1 billion, and receivers of the Ameriprise Client Experience Award. Brandon and Rex, thanks for joining us here today. Like our Facebook page, Through the Pines. Follow us on Instagram at Pines_podcast. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Through the Pines. Okay, so we're going to dive into some scams. First, I would like to know if either of you have been caught up in scams of any kind.
Of any kind?
Of any kind, yeah, that's pretty broad. Of any kind. Gotta be one of it.
My kids scam me out of my wallet
there we go.
Daily.
There we go. That counts. Okay.
Yeah.
Rex, have you had somebody literally come to your office and say, I think I've been scammed?
So early in my career, I had somebody that I didn't know come into my office and want to open up an account. And so we started going kind of through the process, and they were just being really cagey about answering some of the questions. Now, this was before 9/11, before the Patriot Act, before all those kinds of things. We still had know your client rules through the industry. So you still had to kind of ask them, net worth and income and some of those kinds of questions. But as I got into it, he was trying to open up a business account for a boating company. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, we're in the center of Utah. What kind of boating company are you really trying to open up in the center of Utah?
Yeah.
And so as I dug, he was trying to open up an account to where they were shipping out of Florida. And it just got weird. And so I started digging a little bit, didn't open up the account, called our back office, and it ended up being a scam. It ended up being that he was trying to money launder pirate money.
Yeah, this is good stuff
from the sea. This was a weird thing, and I was maybe 2 years in the business is all, and yet I was luckily I knew enough to know that I didn't know and to ask the right questions and bring the right people in. But it was just a weird deal. But yeah, you don't run across those very often. Something that dramatic. That's the only one that dramatic that I ran across that was that extreme.
Pirate money. So that's why it was a
pirate money. Yeah.
That's where the boat idea came from, I guess.
It was a weird, so our back office kind of dug into it a little bit, and it was actually a little bit of mafia money tied up through kind of the Midwest, through Chicago, that was being funneled through. It was coming from Florida, and so essentially you would have these pirates that would raid boats, steal jewelry, steal whatever's on the boats, and then they would bring it into Florida, sell it, funnel it through Chicago, and then they wanted to kind of use our institution to kind of funnel it through as you kind of launder those funds to try and make them legitimate. It was a very complex setup that they were going through, and we were like stage 4 on our step through it, as far as where the money was coming in and getting wired through another financial institution coming into us was the intent. And luckily didn't ever get involved in that. So
I don't have pirate scams on my list. So
yeah, that's because we're talking about current day scams, not scams of 20 years ago. So
well, there's still pirates out there, and you know what they're good at? I've heard, besides scamming people, romance. Lovers on the sea, Oh my goodness. Okay, so romance scams initiated online very quickly, with the scammer expressing their love early on or on the seas. You never know. And meeting in person, funds may be requested indirectly or directly. Okay, talk to me about these romance scams. And I find these heartbreaking because people who are typically victims would be someone who's not in the best place in their life, I'm assuming. So who wants to dive into this?
These are real. I'm going to let Brandon dive into this, but these are real for sure.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I've experienced a few of these with
Not
clients.
you, like you personally?
Well, I kind of just kidding. Yeah, not personally with clients. And you're right. Usually it comes from people, very ordinary, normal people, right, who are living a good life, but that might be lonely, right? They're divorced or widowed or something, and they find themselves on either being contacted or on some sort of dating website, right? And next thing you know, it sounds wild or unimaginable, but next thing you know, you've got these people have relationships, right, where they're literally texting or messaging every day, multiple times a day, and they are sending pictures, they're talking to each other, they're talking about their lives, and inevitably with these scams, they become good friends, and then that person has an emergency, right? They need to pay their rent, they need money, or they're going to get kicked out. A lot of times they'll say, hey, I want to come find you, right? I want to come meet you, I want to be with you, but I need money for a flight, and so that's how that usually, very quickly, you can figure out that their scam is all of a sudden, often very quickly, they're asking for money. And money isn't sent the normal ways, right? It's not, oh, let me send you a check. It's usually, I need gift cards, right? Or you need to wire this money. And so, yeah,
And Brandon, excuse me, why would that be? Excuse me, they want access to an account?
Never say never. The sky's the limit on what scammers will do. However, they're trying not to be caught, right? And so that's why gift cards, like if anyone ever is asking you to pay them in gift cards, and this isn't just romance scams, but people will literally pretend to be the IRS and then get into people's heads so much that they think the IRS is asking them to go buy gift cards and pay their taxes with gift cards. And obviously that sounds crazy, right?
Okay.
But
Wild.
The amount that they can get in your head, right, is if you talk to these scammers and the prolonged conversations, it's amazing what people will start to believe. And one of the main things, right, one of the main tenets is they try and isolate you. They try and tell you, do not talk to your family, right? If you tell your family about this, something bad's going to happen, or like, you need to stay quiet about this. And often I've found, as I've been able to talk to people, right, because they act kind of cagey, or they're doing weird things, and so we talk about it more. Once they open up about it, oftentimes they're like, oh wow, yeah, that sounds crazy, but when you're in your own head and you haven't really talked it through with anyone, you can start to believe some of these things.
So you have some red flags of a romance scam. I'll go through these. Someone has claimed to fall in love with you quickly, often within 24 to 48 hours. I think that happens to Rex on the daily. People just fall in love with him every 24 hours, right? They want to immediately leave the online site to use instant message or email. I find that interesting. They request to keep the relationship a secret. They tell you they need money for an unexpected emergency for themselves or a family member, and they ask you to set up a bank account. Well, that's not a red flag or anything. Or request your account information online, and is bold enough to request account login credentials, which you do that, then you're asking for it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of times they come at it, very softly from the side. And so they start to kind of pre-sell the person on the idea of, oh, family won't understand because they don't like, multicultural relationships, or I'm in another country and they're going to think it's a scam, and it's not. And so they try and just kind of pre-sell the idea to you that everybody's going to object and set the stage so that when they do object, they're like, oh yeah, you called it, this is real, and they don't believe it. And therefore it's me and you against the world. Right. And they kind of, they get in that space, and unfortunately people like, companionship, and they like feeling needed and wanted. And so they just kind of feed into that. And then that feeds into trying to get the money in a untrackable way or a non-clawback way, either or. And so that can be a Venmo, that can be an Apple Pay, it can be, gift cards, it can be, any of these ways that it's more difficult to track or to claw that money back and stop the transfer. Because if you write them a check, you can always put a stop payment on a check, right? But wires, once a wire is gone, a wire is gone.
Yeah.
And so that's the hard part. But it's amazing that this is probably one of the most common that I'm seeing today. And I mean, there's probably a top 3, and this is probably one of the top 3.
I mean, it's gross. I mean, you're taking advantage of people's. I hate it. It's terrible. Okay, so we'll move on. Lottery scams. Lottery scams feel like this is more on the person, but I don't know. Let's see. In other words, is this we're still talking about somebody taking advantage of somebody else, or is this someone making their own decisions to dive into a lottery? We will find out. So
yeah. The lottery itself, may or
Right.
may not be a good idea, but we're talking specifically scams. And so a lottery
Okay.
scam, usually starts out with a phone call. Hey, congratulations, you've won. And people say, holy cow, wouldn't it be great?
I didn't even enter.
And that's one of the red flags, right? If you haven't entered any sort of lottery, you're not going to win any sort of lottery. And so, sometimes this plays a little bit on the greed side. People are like, man, I didn't enter it, but here I am, and I read something a little bit ago where they say some of these scams are actually intentionally, they're intentionally being obvious. Right. Like, I think we've all received those phone calls like, congratulations, you've won, and we all hang up like 2 seconds. Right. Like, no, I haven't. But they're trying to be overly obvious, because what that does is it auto skims the people who are maybe a little bit more gullible. Right. The people who are going to follow along, and it cuts out and saves them from wasting time, talking to other people who might catch on down the road. And so, but yeah, these lottery scams are you get a call, you get a text, you get something saying, hey, congratulations, you've won, which then inevitably morphs into, but we got to pay the taxes first, or there's a cost to get this processed. And once you pay us, then we'll send you the money, which obviously is kind of one of the biggest red flags, right? Is if it's a lottery, you withhold taxes. And when they pay you a check, right, part of it goes to the government, sure, but you're not fronting that cost. No lottery would do that. If you did that, I mean, what would happen if you don't have the funds, right? You just don't win. Like, that's some fine print.
So I like this new trend of people who screenshot them trying to get scammed out of something, and they put it on the socials. I have a friend of mine who won a truck yesterday, apparently. And it was through a YouTube page, a YouTube channel. Oh, you follow my channel. And so my friend played along, and he said, oh yes, you're my favorite channel. And it's a super expensive brand new Ford truck or something. And there was a delivery fee of $100, $105, some weird number. And so they wanted him to pay this delivery fee to get this. And my friend drug it out and was like, actually, you're right down the street. I'll just come to you. He told this scam artist, and the scam artist was like, well, no, we deliver. You gotta, and it was funny. And those are humorous, but I'm like, I cannot believe that. And the grammar's all wrong, the word's weird, and it's like, this is like you said, Brandon, should be obvious, but a lot of people will carry it on and go through with it and send money and send $100 because they want the freaking truck or something. That's like they just won the lottery.
Yeah. Well, and I've watched it, and it's sad, right? Because I've seen people who are like, and this is what I'm going to do with it, right? Like, this is my big break. Like, this is my chance to really change my family, right? Like, with all this money that I think I won, I'm going to be able to take everyone on a trip, and everybody's going to and unfortunately they start thinking down these like hypothetical what ifs and get so focused on that outcome that they lose track of maybe some of the red flags that they should be paying attention to.
So the red flags in a lottery scam would be you didn't purchase a lottery ticket or enter a chance to win. If you don't play, you don't win. Sweepstakes organizations will not contact you directly. State lotteries publish winners online or broadcast results on television. I actually didn't know that. The representatives, I know they broadcasted it, but I didn't know they didn't contact you directly. The representative claims there's a deadline to pay the fee or initial tax. In reality, the scammer is trying to get you to act before you catch on that there really isn't a prize. And the scammer doesn't want you to tell friends or family of your good fortune. Now, there's a place, this is a real place in Death Valley called Scotty's Castle. It has been inaccessible the last few years because there was a flood that wiped out the road. But the reason it exists is because if you go there and you hear the story about Scotty's Castle, back in the day, all of these miners from Nevada would get investors from New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and to say, hey, I need you to invest in my mine. And they would give these miners money, and there's no mine. There's no gold mine. There's nothing. They're in the middle of the desert, right? It's a scam. So the one guy was like, okay, I'm going to fly out or train out there, and we're going to see where this mine is. And Scotty, this miner named Scotty, drags this investor through Death Valley before the investor is finally like, okay, there's no mines or anything. But what there is where we're staying is the only watering hole in this desert. I'm going to buy property here, and I'm going to build a house, which he did, a giant hotel type thing. And then he sold the idea that the mine was under the house, and that was the workers that were there. And you could go tour the house, and it's called Scotty's Castle, and it's in Death Valley. And so he was scamming the scammers. But it's just a wild story how this actually came about. And in other words, and this has happened since people have been on Earth, we've been getting scammed, right? But this is people not knowing the full story. So the fact that this person actually took the time to go like research, like, all right, I'm going to go to the place where they say there's a mine, and we'll figure it out. Turns out the house he built, when it became a national park, they where you figure out where your land is, and he's like, hey, you actually built this house on land you don't own. And they had to give it to the National Park Service or something. And then they offered to sell it back to him for like $1 or something weird. It's this weird long thing. But once the tours are back going again, you can actually tour the upstairs, you can tour the downstairs. And it's like this, it's the coolest place. Scotty's Castle in Death Valley, built because it started off as a scam.
That's
from miners. Yeah.
That is crazy.
Anyway, that was a story I didn't think I'd get into today, but that was pretty fun. Okay. Inheritance scams. Someone claiming to be an attorney or customs official. Now this is even, okay. There's the romance ones, and these might be worse because someone potentially, I'm assuming someone close to your family has passed, and then the inheritance scammers come out of the woodworks to really take advantage.
That definitely, I'm sure, happens, right? But this in particular, this is, you don't even know, right? Like you're just living your life.
Gotcha.
Someone
Okay.
calls you, says, I'm an attorney from this and such a law firm, and it's your lucky day. You've won, right? Or not won. You've inherited a large sum of money. You're the only distant relative that was left, and we've tracked you down. What's crazy about this one is this can happen. Right? Like it literally can happen. It's incredibly rare, but it can happen. And so, there's some things to do to make sure that, and things to watch for to make sure that it is actually legitimate.
So if it's legitimate, how does that work?
So we've been on both sides of this. It's been interesting because on the legitimate side, right, maybe we have a client that passes and they've listed maybe nephews, nieces, whoever, right, as beneficiaries, and so we've got to find them, right, or somebody's got to find them and let them know that they've inherited some money, and so we had one case where it wasn't our client but our client was the trustee of a trust, and this person had passed away in England, named her because they'd had a couple of conversations as the trustee here in the U.S. of some funds that he had in the U.S., but then the beneficiary was some other random guy that he knew in England. But it was legitimate money, and it was legitimately his account. And so we ended up, actually getting control of the account, getting the funds over here. But then she went over to England to find this guy. She found him, and he's like, oh, no, this has got to be a scam. You don't have any money for me. She's like, no, I've got $1.2 million for you.
Wow.
You
Oh,
know? And he's like,
how are we supposed to believe that? Yeah.
right. He's like, well, what do I have to do for it? And she's like,
Sure.
well, just tell me where to wire it. And he's like, oh, you want my account information?
Right.
And
Oh,
she's
jeez.
like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, so anyhow, it took a few months to kind of finally we went, we talked to the bank president of the little town he was in. We wired it into a bank account. The bank then waited, verified, cleared it, and ended up getting it over to him. But that's a legitimate inheritance thing, right?
Wow.
And so that's hard. But the ones that this is referencing is too often we see an email that comes over that says, hey, so and so passed away in Nigeria, and we need,
Why is it always
50.
Nigeria, by the way?
I don't know. I don't know. And so everybody that's from Nigeria, I'm not really picking on Nigeria,
Yeah.
but anyway, there's my disclaimer. But if you send us $1,000, that's what it takes to release the funds from customs, and and so that's how they scam you out of some money, is they try and release the funds and get it taken care of. So,
Brandon, you're saying that you should never have to put up money to get the money, right?
Right. And I think one of the biggest telltale signs of a scam versus legitimate is just how open are they, right? Like, are they saying, hey, you need to keep this a secret, don't tell anybody, if you don't talk to your bank, don't talk, going through the works to keep it a secret, versus someone else saying, hey, no, like, here I am, let's go talk to the bank president, let's get this figured out. There's some real significant differences between, hey, I need your information and don't tell anyone about this, versus being very open about it.
Yeah. Whenever they say don't tell anyone about this, that's not good. Red flags of an inheritance scam. The individual that contacts you claims to be associated with a law firm or financial institution, Rex. The letter might even appear to be from a legitimate organization and uses letterhead, but contact information contains a public email domain such as a Gmail or Hotmail. Oh yeah, interesting. Okay, the individual is eager to share personal documents with you to validate the inheritance claim. However, a legitimate organization would never share another client's personal documents with you. Finally, you're asked to go ahead.
On that, right? Like, if someone's like saying, hey, yeah, I'll send you their death certificate, I'll send you their birth, right? Like, if I have an inheritance for someone, I can't just like start sharing their information, right? Like, and neither would a law firm. They're not going to just start blasting information out.
Finally, you're asked to contact the individual immediately for more information on how to receive your inheritance before the government claims it. The government will take it all. Wow. Okay. Inheritance scams. Those are sad as well. Brandon, do you have some more numbers for us?
Yeah. I was going to say on that, that's another common one, right? Like keeping it secret, obviously, but then the urgency. Almost all scams have a dire urgency. Don't tell anyone, and this needs to happen in 6 hours, and
Right.
Just because they know that the longer you think about it, the longer you have to maybe talk to someone, the longer you have to kind of realize what's going on. So anyway, some more numbers. I thought this was interesting. So this comes from the New York Federal Reserve, and based on consumer expectations. Consumers almost always think inflation is higher than it actually is, which is interesting. But they looked at consumer inflation over the last 12 months, and it was at 3.83%, and that's dropped down to 3.55%. which is the lowest it's been since April of 2021. Now, something else that I think is interesting, right? So that 17 or so 0.17 drop is good, but pre-COVID, the historical average for what people thought, inflation was running at was 2.81. And so people are still thinking it's high, but so inflation is interesting. One point I've got to point out is we talk to people about inflation coming down, which it has been. The rate of inflation has come down dramatically. But anytime you say that, you almost inevitably get some eye rolls like, yeah, you haven't been shopping at the same store I've been shopping at. And what's important to understand is when we say inflation's down to 3%, what that means is it is now 3% higher than it was last year, when it was 9% higher than the year before, right? When the Fed and when professionals talk about inflation coming down. We're not saying that prices are going to go back to what they used to be, unfortunately, right? But rather the rate of increase is going to slow down.
Yeah. So there's always inflation. Is inflation a scam? But your salaries have to catch up, and the economy has to catch up to the amount of inflation that occurred quickly over the last couple. Was it not 2 years quite? It was 18 months, something like that, where it was bumped
that's
up
when
to
it
what you say
started.
is high.
It was about 18 months ago. Yeah, it started around.
Yeah.
You started to see it pick up the tail end of 21, just barely, and then through 22, it really kind of spiked, and so.
And at that point, your cost of goods in, like you said, Brandon, in the store is going up faster than your paycheck is going up. And so people will feel that. And then once it drops down to what we would call an average of 3% or something, and there's an arguments to be made on what inflation should average, whether it's 1% or 3%, and what's healthy and what's not. Because then the growth of your paycheck's got to catch up, and it'll probably take us. How long do you think it'll take us to catch up, Rex, as a society, as far as pay to what happened over the last 18 months?
Well, it always lags, and so it's just a matter of how long, and that's tough to say. There were fairly, like in Social Security, right? Social Security had an 8% increase this year,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was significant, and so that kept a lot of those on fixed incomes close, not quite, but close to where the inflation jump was. And so we'll see where it comes in at on this next year. But most of the time it's another year, 18-month lag. But it depends. If the economy slows drastically and people are losing jobs, then there's no reason that employers are going to increase their wages, right? Because there's an oversupply of labor. And so it is a very delicate line that the Federal Reserve and the Treasury and the different groups walk in managing the financial health of our economy.
Well, you brought it up. Social Security. Is Social Security a scam?
No, Social Security is a government welfare program.
If I took that same amount of money, that in other words, if rather than the government managing that money for you for me, and instead, Rex, you manage that money for me, do you feel like you might be able to do a better job? Let's say.
So, do I feel like I believe that we could do a better job in managing those funds? The reality is, and we have this debate all the time. The reality is that the vast majority of people would not save the money that you're forced to save through the Social Security program, one. And two, the vast majority of people wouldn't invest it. They would spend it, stick it under a mattress, stick it in a savings or a checking account at extremely low rates of return, as opposed to some other rate of return. And so I don't know that there's an easy answer for Social Security or entitlement programs at large, and you look at societal benefits, and we could debate for a lot of podcasts on the different elements of each of those. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's a chunk of change, and it's a chunk of change that it would be nice to have some options with. Either let the government do it for you, or it's mandatory withdrawal, but you could potentially sign it over to an advisor or something. I don't know, but it would be nice to have some sort of control over something like that.
Have you gone in, not to take off on a tangent too deep here, but you can go to the myssa.gov site, right, and log into your Social Security website and look at what your benefits are, your expected benefits, and when your full retirement age is. But on that site, it also shows how much money you've contributed and how much money your employers have contributed over time. And that's always kind of interesting to see how much that equates to, and what that would be earning and what your distribution rate is off of those funds. It doesn't show the growth of those funds. And so it just shows the actual dollars contributed. But that is an interesting exercise for our listeners to go in and see what have you actually contributed into Social Security and what have your employers actually contributed into Social Security on your behalf.
Very good. Okay, timeshare scam. You are contacted by a third party regarding the sale or rental of your timeshare in Mexico, of course, for more than it's worth, which there are some gorgeous places in Mexico where I would love a timeshare. The third party guarantees that you will have a buyer or renter for your timeshare. However, they require upfront fees again to affect the sale. The buyer or renter requires a wire payment for closing costs, taxes, other fees in an escrow account in Mexico. No red flags whatsoever prior to the completion of the sale. So we have my family personally, we have a timeshare, condo association timeshare, and we love it and we use it all the time. And so and we have real estate coming up next too. And so in real estate, you can make real money and people do fantastic jobs, building wealth in real estate, and you probably can with timeshares. So how do we know these are scams versus like legit deals, Rex?
Well, I don't know about building wealth through timeshares. You'll have to walk me through what that looks like.
I'll walk you through that later. Yeah, maybe I was a little ahead of myself on that one, but maybe if you're flipping them somehow, I don't know.
I don't know, but I do think that most of the time when you have a timeshare, if you're going to rent or resell your time, most of them have a facility for you to do that directly through the timeshare company that you purchased it through, and that's probably the most legitimate way to do it. And then therefore, if you're on the buyer side, you're going in to buy those timeshare weeks, or you're going in to rent those units. Again, you want to go through that same channel that the other person would go through, as opposed to just going on an internet search and finding some random site that shows you a screaming deal. This is one of those situations where if it looks too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true. And so I think you do need to be careful on spotting those things.
Okay. Yeah, ours was an inheritance scam. We got ours in. It was really nice, actually. So red flags on what to look for on timeshare scams include the promise of a buyer who's willing to pay more than the timeshare is worth. Payments for taxes, closing costs, and other fees have to be sent in a wire transfer prior to completing the sale or rental. The third party doesn't exist at the address they claim. Yeah, that's bad. The phone numbers have U.S. area codes, but the calls come from out of country, like Mexico. And in some cases, an alleged law firm contacts you to help recover the funds lost and require an upfront retainer fee. However, this may also be related to the scam. What's not on here, I don't think, is our friend who was a billionaire for a hot second, and then he got arrested in another country. What's his name? This was recent news. Tech investor, sort of a guy running giant money through his firm, and he was able to get money from famous people, like all invested with him. And
are you talking about the crypto Sam Friedman? Or
Sam Friedman, yeah, Sam Friedman. Yeah, okay. So that's a scam, right?
Well, so in his situation, I mean, there's definitely crypto scams or currency scams, right? And and in that situation, there was some issues going on to where the money's not really being handled or invested in the way that it was being promised or indicated. At least that's what's being. I don't know if it's been finalized or not, but that's the alleged, right? So
he's in jail.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So yeah, but I mean, you can be in jail and still wait in court, and I don't know if I don't know his case well enough to know if he's been proven guilty or not. But there's definitely cases like that on the currency side and cryptocurrency, and there's a lot of that. And so, but timeshares are tricky just because, people want to go and stay places, or they want to buy weeks, or they want to go stay somewhere, and everybody's looking for a deal, right? And so it really can kind of prey on that, urgency of I want to go stay, I need to go stay, or I need a night, and where can I go, and where's it cheapest, and instead of verifying that what you're doing is legitimate. So,
okay, real estate scams. Clients closing on a property and receives legitimate wiring instructions from their real estate agent, title company, or attorney on where to send the wire transfer, typically a title company or law office. The client then receives a fraudulent email appearing to be from the real estate agent. Ooh, that's bad. Title company or attorney instructing them to change the wire transfer instructions. Ooh, I have not heard of this. This is not good. And send it to a new recipient or bank account number. The new recipient is often an unrelated third-party business or individual. Wow, I didn't know that happened. That's
So
crazy.
this is one of the most common that we see out there right now, of scams on big money, and it's through all companies right now, all financial institutions. This is a big issue, and so essentially somebody hacks into your email, um, and can copy and paste your language and previous conversations and reference previous conversations with your advisor or with the title company or whoever you're working with. And so it looks and feels like the person.
Hmm.
And essentially what they'll do is they'll send over and say, oh, I transposed these two numbers. I verified it with the title company. This is the wire instructions. And so make sure you're using this latest information because the previous was bad.
Hmm.
And then they'll reference something personal like, how's your dog? How's Buffy? How's whatever, right? And and they'll kind of tie that personal fill in, and somebody that's not paying attention will go ahead and update the document and send it over, get a signature, and the wire's there, and it's gone. And so, we actually we had a client that was subjected to this, as far as on very similar on a wire fraud that was similar to that. It wasn't a real estate transaction, but it was the exact same scenario. It was actually a law firm, and they were dealing on a case, and they received a communication saying that they're supposed to wire funds in a different direction for, about $150,000 or so, and they send it off. And when that wire's gone, it's gone. There's no way for you to claw it back. There's no way to fix it, no way to track it, and they got scammed out of $150,000. And these are smart guys.
So how do you prevent that? What do you do? What do you have? You have, whenever there's a request, contact the title company. How do you?
Personal contact. You call them. You've got to have personal contact. And so if it's a title company that I'm familiar with and I know, then I'll call them directly. If it's somebody that I don't know, then I'll do a conference call with the client, or with the client, the real estate agent, and the title company, because there's going to be a direct tie in between one of those parties, right? Either the real estate agent, referred the title company over, or the client is specifically using a title company. And so there's going to be a tie in there to where there's a personal connection, and you need to make sure that things are verified through that personal connection.
So I think it's been about, go ahead, Brandon.
Obviously you don't want to use the phone number on the email, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to just verify and say, oh yeah, let me call and verify, right? Because that's the wrong number.
I mean, in running a small business, we've seen a lot of emails come through that are fraudulent, and they're supposed to look like PayPal, or they're supposed to look like Shopify or something, and they'll have the logo there. But if you read the entire email that it was sent from, it's like, it's totally fake. It's not from Shopify. It's from somebody else. Another, bank. I bank with the popular bank in Utah, where we're from, credit union, American First Credit Union. About a year ago, I think they were having massive issues with fraud and through text messaging and emails. And so you would get an email that says this account has been charged this, blah, blah, blah. And there's a link on the email supposedly to your account. And if you click that link, you are in trouble. So what I would have to do is not open the links, but go individually to my own account, log in, and see if there's been fraudulent transactions in my account. And there never was. It was a scam, but they have your email, they have your information, and it's scary. And it happened a lot. It slowed down quite a bit recently, but I think it was about a year ago that people were getting taken advantage of.
Brandon, that's the perfect example of what to do almost in any scam, right? Is if you're being contacted by someone saying, hey, something's happening, you're receiving an inheritance, whatever it is, stop communicating on that and work your way around, right? Just like you said with America First, you get a text and it looks like it's America First saying, hey, something's happened. Don't follow that. Back up, go to the app on your phone, go into the branch, do whatever you need to do to verify whether something is or isn't happening, because using those links, and they always make it easy to follow, those are usually the guys that are committing the scam in the first place. And so stop whatever type of scam it is, stop there and contact a trusted source directly.
I always put a block on that number too, just because I don't.
Smart.
Yeah. Okay. Event scams, and I have an event. I got to share with you because this is what you put in your notes is a little different than what I was thinking when you put event scams. So, in the notes here, world events can evoke deep emotions like compassion, rage, or fear, causing people to want to help in some way, and scammers prey on these strong emotions. And scam activity often increases where there are significant world events. For example, COVID-19 pandemic. There were many people who were under or unemployed in addition to those directly impacted by the virus, so the need is great. Scams specifically related to the COVID-19 include donation scams, identity theft scams, investment and product scams. So, yes, what about event scams, Brandon?
Yeah, this perfectly ties into what we were just talking about. Anytime anything happens, the fire in Maui, which was, terrible, or earthquakes or what, there's always something going on. Scammers will use that to call or send a message or do whatever, say, hey, I'm from this and such organization. We're here just trying to collect money to help out. And Americans are really generous people and they want to help. But that's where it's important not to just follow whatever link or whatever call is given. But if you want to give money, like find an organization that you trust, go to that organization's website, right? Make sure you go to make sure you got their URL right, and then donate to them directly, because it's incredible how much money is stolen. And even legitimate, organizations that are legitimately legally set up, a lot of them will actually siphon off a fair amount, to administration and costs like that. And so it's always a good idea, if you want to give, if you want to help out, just make sure you look and choose a trusted organization.
Okay, well, where I thought you were going with event scams is the Fire Festival 2 is back. And
yeah, that's a crazy one.
Sold out already. It's supposed to be the party. This is according to, what is this? What am I on? MSN site here. To end all parties, the Fire Festival is such a disaster. It landed the organizer, Billy McFarland, in prison in 2017, I think it was. The 31-year-old announced the first batch of ticket sales to his, well, that event ended up being a Netflix special, a couple of different specials, how terrible that was. Now he's back. So Fire Festival 2. So this is in an unspecified Caribbean location at the end of 2024. And the people are buying the tickets. They're $500 a pop, and people are buying tickets. This blows my mind. Did they not see the Netflix? Rex, what's going on here?
It's the fear of missing out, right? I mean, man, what a fun festival that must be. I mean, how much trouble could I have gotten into back in 2017? So, yeah, I think it is interesting, because I think people want to have fun. They want to believe. They want to believe that there's good in people, and so I see things like that on, the people will come to me and they'll be like, hey, I want to go and do this adventure. I found it on the internet. It looks really fun. And you dig into it, and it's a scam, right? Mm-hmm. It's essentially a fake business to where they've modified. That's what you're seeing kind of on the Red Cross or the Ukraine efforts or the Maui efforts, is you see scammers come in and set up, kind of fake donation sites that look as legitimate as can be. And I think that's only going to get worse with the AI technology that's coming out more and more, is to where that looks and feels and sounds more legitimate than we've ever seen. Right. And I think that it's even more important to work with people that you know and trust, listen to people that you know and trust, and continue to take that advice and guidance for those around you that care about you and want the best for you.
Very good. Okay, last on the list here are tech scams. Tech support scams. Claim your computer or device is infected with a virus or malware and requires an immediate costly fix. Now, was this more prominent a few years back? It feels like this doesn't happen as much, but I don't know. So some of the red flags can be: you receive an unsolicited phone call or email from someone claiming to work at a reputable tech company. A pop-up or blue screen appears on your computer, phone, or tablet with a warning that your device is infected with a virus or malicious program. Also, or the message requests you immediately call a toll-free number and click the link for technical help. The message contains poor grammar or misspelled words. You are asked to pay for tech support. Brandon, how often is this happening these days?
It still happens. It still happens. Yeah, they'll send. In fact, I had a story with a good ending. I had a client who was on her computer, and a little thing popped up and said, "Hey, you need to run this thing to scan for viruses," and of course, clicking on the thing is what actually downloads the virus itself.
Sure.
Right. And so, but it looks legitimate, right? It looks like it's from Microsoft. It looks like it's from one of these, it's a trusted software company. She clicks on it, and next thing you know, right? Because then once you download the malware, then they start spying on your computer, right? They can see what you're typing, see sites you're going to. Next thing you know, they had, the sheriff from the town coming over. Yeah, obviously, he wasn't really coming, but they said that the sheriff was coming over unless she paid this and such. Anyway, and so she was worried, and she did exactly what she should have done. She went into her bank, said, "Hey, here's what's happening. I'm a little bit nervous, right? Like, I think I'm in trouble. I did something. I don't know, right?" And that bank handled it perfectly, right? They told her, "Hey, no, this is a scam, right? You probably clicked on this." They got her in contact with a computer company to wipe, the computer clean. And then the guy there said, "Hey, you should probably never talk to these people again, right? These are scammers. Just delete the number or forget it." And when she was telling me the story, she's like, "But I didn't want to leave our relationship like that, so I called the scammer back." and
what a nice person.
This is the best. She said, "I called the scammer back. They didn't answer my call, so I left a voicemail. I thanked him for all of his help and all of his time." And said that I went down to the bank, and the bank guy told me it was a scam, and so he recommended I transfer all my money to my son's account, and so I did. And she's like, "I don't even have a son,"
oh my gosh, that is funny.
And then never was contacted again, right? And unfortunately, what we find is that these scams, they're so relentless that it might start as a romance scam, but then all of a sudden it turns into a tech scam, and they are working. We find people are on phone calls with multiple people, right? They'll say, "Hey, yeah, I'm working on this over here. You need to talk to the police department. I'll have them give you a call." They're like, "Okay." They hang up the phone. Next thing you know, there's an incoming call. It's just from another scammer, right? But they're like, "Hey, I'm from such and such police department. I was told to call," and they're doing all this to kind of build the anxiety, build the trust, right? And try to build a case of legitimacy. But again, that's where it's best. Don't let them contact you. Go contact the police department yourself. And I've done that with clients, right? Where they were so worked up that I said, "Hey, let's just call," right? And we actually had the actual sheriff come out and say, "Hey, yeah, this isn't a problem, right? You're not on a crazy list. Like, this is like you're perfectly fine. You're a good, upstanding member of our society. There's nothing you need to worry about." And sometimes that's just what you got to do. But it's hard too, because these scammers are saying, "Don't talk to anybody. If you do talk to somebody, then you'll be in more trouble. All you need to do is pay me this money and I'll take care of all of it," right? All your problems will go away. And of course, it's just them trying to pull more and more money.
I think that this happens a lot more than anybody admits still, especially with the elderly. And so I know, somebody in my family that got hit with this, clicked on the wrong thing, and they didn't, they recognized that they'd clicked on the wrong link right away. So they didn't log into their email, they didn't log into their bank accounts, things like that. But their computer had immediately been infected, and so somebody took the computer, threw it against a brick wall, and so dumped some ammonia on it and whatever else, right? And then
there are other ways to handle that. Just throwing that out there. You don't need to use the brick wall. Technically, you can go to a computer store.
Okay.
That's probably not the preferred method actually of breaking it, but anyhow, there are definitely less invasive ways to clean up your systems. So
Rex,
but it happens a lot.
What's the FBI do? Like, what are people like? Why, if that's so prevalent, like why are these people not being taken down on the daily or something?
Well, one, I think it's hard to track, right? I think it's extremely difficult to track and takes a lot of, resources to do, a lot of labor hours to do. And two, I think a lot of it goes unreported. I would bet a large percentage never gets reported to the authorities. I know almost every city of size has a task force, a scam task force, especially on technology, that where you can report things and they'll kind of track it. And if they start getting a lot of calls in one area, then they will dig into it and try and put a stop to it. But it's so difficult to track because of the technology that people can use as far as jumping IPSs and different things as far as locations. It's so hard, so difficult. And so people keep doing it and people keep falling for it, especially our elderly clients. And then they're embarrassed to let anybody know. And so, then it becomes an issue. And so don't be embarrassed. Let's just fix it. Let's just figure out where you're at and get it taken care of.
Yeah. All right. If you feel you've been scammed, Rex, what do you suggest people do? Can they contact your office? Do they call the police? What does it look like?
Well, if it's a financial scam or you're concerned it's a financial scam, absolutely give us a call, right? Let us know. Most of the time, we want you to call your sheriff's office and report it through your sheriff's office. And so that's typically where those task forces reside, or if not, they can tell you where it should be taken care of. At the bare minimum, tell somebody close to you, right? Tell a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, tell somebody close to you so that they can help you kind of get to where you need to be.
Okay.
And the help and resources. So.
All right. That is planwithbaxter.com. If you want to reach out to Rex and Brandon. We'll end with this on scams, financial scams, major red flags in all situations. So this is sort of a recap. Payment via gift card, which Brandon talked about early on, money order, wire transfer, international funds transfer, preloaded or virtual currency like a Bitcoin, phone calls claiming to be from the IRS. The IRS does not contact people by phone, email, text message, or social media to ask for your social security number, bank account, or government benefits debit card account number. The individual that contacts you claims to be associated with a law firm or financial institution, but the contact information contains a public email domain such as a Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, etc. The individual is eager to share personal documents with you to validate their claim. However, a legitimate organization would never share another person's or client's personal documents with you. And then finally, they request to keep the relationship a secret. So I think we've learned a lot today. Anything else you guys want to add?
Don't keep us a secret.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just figured that felt right in. We don't want you. We don't want you to keep us a secret. Do you like that? Was that good?
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, okay. That's a good idea. So this has been Through the Pines, and this was really fun. So I appreciate Rex and Brandon on the podcast today. Again, planwithbaxter.com. For any of your questions, or if you would like some financial advice, planwithbaxter.com for all the things. Like our Facebook page, follow our Instagram at @Pines_podcast, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Through the Pines. This has been Through the Pines, reminding you to use yesterday's dollars to finance tomorrow's dreams. Yeah.